Hi everybody, I'm Joey. Happy New Year! This is the first video of 2019 for me. I'm going to be making this set of doors. I've just finished them now. By the end of the video, we'll be hanging them in their place. That's tomorrow for me. It's a pretty comprehensive video. It's a fairly long one. I wanted to be as precise as I could with how this was actually made. So I've tried to cut out what I can. But it's as long as I think it needs to be, so bear with me and see you later. So I'm using American oak and French oak for this job. First thing is just to get everything down to more usable size pieces. This is the quarter sawn French oak for the stiles. All the other pieces flat sawn American white oak, which is what the client really wanted. I just couldn't find any quarter sawn available. With the rails all cut to length, I can start forming the tenons. After laying out the shape of the tenons, I can cut the waste away with the handsaw. Then I can trace the tenons onto the sides of the stiles, so I know where to cut the holes. And then I made this jig up just for this job, where I use a long downcut bit to create the mortise. First the smaller haunching part of the mortise. With that done, I can take out the stoppers on the jig and cut the rest of the depth of the large mortise. Now I can take to the corners of the tenons with the rasp just to make them fit in the rounded corners of the mortise. So at this point the stiles are too long and the total width of the door is too wide, and that's just so I can get it perfectly down to size on the table saw after glue up. First I've got to make the paneling. So I machine up some oak and rip it down so I can make some tongue and groove. And I can groove all the panels on one side and also the door frame itself. And then I can create a tongue on the ends of the panels with the dado set. And I decided to try and use the dado set to cut the long tongues as well, which actually worked pretty good. Now I can clean up all the inside faces of the rails and stiles. And then using a little rounding over plane, add a small round over to all the edges. And it's time to start dry fitting everything. So all of the panels are in but one, and now I clamp up the door as it will be, so I can measure what the actual size of that last panel needs to be, not just relying on the theoretical. So this last board, I had actually planned to have a double tongue. I ended up with a double groove, so not to worry, I've just made up a couple of slip feathers, floating tongues, so I'll use these instead and we'll do just the same thing. Right, so that's the first door, pretty well fitted up. Now I need to take all these panels out, give them a slight round over, sand them all, and they're going to be pre-finished before I do the glue up, and I'll probably pre-finish the edges of the door as well, and then I'll do the glue up and do all the flattening off after that. Alright, so what have we got? Mortise and tenon joints into the door. Right, hanging on a hinge, great. Now of course over time, gravity is going to be pushing down on this side of the door because this side is fixed by the hinge. And what's going to happen? Yeah, door's going to rack. Even with really good mortise and tenon joints, probably something like that's going to happen. So we've got to put some bracing in. Now, in this case, my client has decided that she really wants, when the two doors are shut together, she wants an X brace look. And it's a little bit tricky because it means the bottom brace is going to be doing all the work and the top brace is going to be doing not a heck of a lot. I'll show you. Okay, so what we need to do is direct the force of gravity back towards the hinge and the supporting wall. So what we want to do is add diagonal brace. Now as gravity has an effect on the door, the force comes down the stile, and then this diagonal brace forces the weight back against the stile and the hinge and the studs, the wall, so on and so forth. So that becomes quite a lot stronger. Now, typically what you would do is have another brace on this angle to help support the top of the stile, the weight coming down to the middle of the door stile here. Of course, that's not the shape my client is after. So what we're going to do this bottom brace is going to be taking the majority of the weight of the door, and we're going to ledge this brace in, so you'll see what that is in a second. The weight comes down and it's just a square cut joint here. It's no special joinery down the bottom. Here there's some slightly different stuff. We're going to match that joinery on this brace, although see the brace isn't actually working because as the weight comes down, this brace just gets pulled away from the stile. So what I'm going to do is add some dominoes across from the brace to the stile here, and also from the the brace to the stile up here, and that's hopefully going to add to supporting the door, and it means that the stile won't be able to drop down, or the brace won't be able to drop down, and therefore move the outside of the stile. That's the plan. So this is me working out for the ledged join between the brace and the center stiles, and the reason for this is because all of the weight will be coming down onto that brace. You don't want the stile to be able to slide along the length of the brace. So if there is a positive stop for that brace to be mounted on into the stile, there will be an absolute no way that that brace is ever moving against the stile. Yep, I'm using that router freehand, which bites me in the butt a little bit, as you can see right there, next to where I'm chiseling, that I accidentally got the piece I shouldn't get. But it's not crazy bad. Right, well, it's not the tightest joint you've ever seen. Well, it's tight, but there's this tiny gap here. But I'll fix that up later. You'll see how. It's not too bad, I reckon. So my client was after a fairly kind of used barn door look. So the first thing is to apply a dark stain. In this case I'm using Brywax dye stain, which is a meths based product, and so it dries almost immediately. So a nice good thick coat of this stuff, and then pretty much sand it all back off again. So I sand it back until the point where I see mainly, or what I think I see is mainly the timber colour, not the stain colour. And then it's really surprising what happens when you put clear coat on top of that. And I'm using a marine grade satin oil-based polyurethane. To get ready for the glue up by making a few dowel pins to hold the door together. So I just smash a bunch of oak through this piece of steel I've drilled a bunch of holes in. Alright, glue up time. Wish me luck. And I'm using epoxy in this job purely for the time. This was a fairly long glue up, and even though my joinery was actually very tight, I could have got away with any other kind of glue. I really needed the time because it's a pretty long process. Traditionally these angled braces would just kind of press fit in, but I like to add just a dab of glue just so I know it's not going to fall out. Alright, call it cheating, or call it whatever you like. And I'm just going to add a little bit of black epoxy to black oxide to the leftover epoxy. There's a couple of gaps in the joinery which I knew were going to be there, but this is not ideal, but this is how I'm going to get rid of those little gaps, because we're staining the oak dark. I can kind of get away with a little bit of a darker join line. Now this actually looks like a terrible join. Some of it is a shadow from the stain that had come around the edge. There is a very small gap there, and it's also slightly proud, which is creating more of a shadow. So from your angle, it doesn't look too good. But I'm just going to fill what gap there is there, and I'll sort it out tomorrow with the hand plane. So I can add some wee pockets to allow for the hinges. I'll talk more about those later, so don't start writing comments just yet. So with the hinge side straight and hinged up, I can trim the other side to its final width and do a nice round over around all the edges, give it a nice final sand. I wanted to add my maker's mark somewhere on the door, so I thought I would put one of my steel badges in the edge of the door, just below the top hinge, and I think it kind of worked pretty cool. So all the while I've been making this door, my client had been trying to find some handles for this thing. Eventually she found some, but the time that she shipped it, it was the new year. And here we go in 2019 now, finally with the door hardware. Okay, I feel like I need to explain these hinges a little bit because I know I'm going to get questions about this and the aluminium frame that you're about to see. The reason you've seen the aluminium frames on the doors I've made on all the other videos and this video is to do with the building process here in New Zealand. It's partly to do with the building process and partly to do with the homeowners not being aware of what is what. In the process of getting a quote and doing all the things necessary for the builder to actually start building the house, he provides the homeowner with said quote, and that includes full window and joinery price, and 9 times out of 10 that's aluminium joinery here, and so it just gets priced in as aluminium joinery into the job. The job goes along, it progresses. The minute the frames are stood up, the aluminium contractor out, he measures up, they start manufacturing. That process takes a couple of months while the building progresses. So when it comes time for the homeowner to decide what their front door really is actually going to be, and they contact me, I say, yeah, sure, I'll come and measure up the space you've got. I get there, oh, the aluminium frame is already in because the builder had to install it, so then he can carry on doing the cladding on the outside of the building and getting it watertight. Otherwise there's a big hole that holds up everything. And it's just not common to have a nice wooden frame to match the door. It's sad. Occasionally I'll catch it early enough where I can tell them, look, don't get that piece of aluminium made up, I'll make a wooden frame. It doesn't happen too often. So that is why these doors are going in an aluminium frame. It's not ideal, it doesn't necessarily suit it, but the frame does match all the rest of the house, and that means the builder can carry on with the same details around all the other windows as well. If we were to, say, scrap the aluminium frame and pull it out and put a wooden one in, we would actually have to make a legal change to the plans and get permission. We'd have to pay for the council to review those plans and all that, and the other site checks that are necessary for that. You could be looking at $2,000 to $3,000 just for the legal change. So it can get to the point where it's just not worth it, where the cost of the frame plus the cost of the inspections and the legal paperwork, it just doesn't, it's just not working out. So it's disappointing sometimes, but that's how it is. And the final really crucial thing to add is a weather strip between the doors. So I need a router groove, and I can plunge in the rubber strip. So now we're on site, and a little bit nervous at this point because there's really no tolerance on these doors. So yeah, but actually, as it turned out, things went exactly to plan. It fitted brilliantly. It's really happy with how the doors fit, and everything works just like it should. After this was all fitted and installed, we ended up taking the doors off and putting them in storage until the house is properly finished. Thanks for watching, everyone.